Hello, everyone, and welcome to Intermediate Webinar from UX Academy. I hope you're all well, and we are so happy to have you here with us tonight to learn more about UX design. So first, let me tell you a little bit about us. We are UX Academy, and my name is Katarina, and I am a training manager here at UX Academy, so I manage our courses, I work with students, with our trainers. And before I bring on Nora, which is a reason why all of you are here today, I will tell you a little bit about UX Academy. So we are a London-based training company, and we run live evening UX design courses with UX professionals who have 7 to 10 years of experience in the field. As you can see here, these are our classes that we run on Zoom, but we started as a classroom running courses at the Central London for a number of years. And then, like everyone else, we had to switch from classroom to Zoom, and we are delivering live courses with live teachers in small groups. As you can see here on the slides, here is our course trainer Stratus, and this is our course running now that we have for UX beginner class. And here are some slides from the courses from previous weeks. We have a lot of fun, and we learn a lot in our classes. When it comes to our students, we taught students from all around the world, from many companies, coming from many countries. And then now a little bit more about why UX Academy. We are delivering classes live, so nothing is pre-recorded. Everything is live with a live trainer. And when you complete the course, you will receive a certificate. Our teachers have 7 to 10 years of experience in the field, and our teacher, Nora, who is here with us, will be able to tell you more about her knowledge and her experience. During our course, you will get experience working on real company projects where you will be applying your knowledge from the UX design course to create a solution. In regards to payment plans, options, if you're based in UK, you are able to pay using our partner Noma, where you can select your rate of repayment. Now we'll learn a little more about our mentorship program. Mentorship is a very neat point about UX Academy. Every week you will have 30 minutes team mentorship with an industry expert where you can address any questions or blockers you have with projects or follow up on any issues that you have or just address any questions. You can ask them about career advices or support because they work in UX industry and they can help you with any questions you might have. So now a little bit about our testimonial page. On our website, myuxacademy.com, you can read about experiences that our students had with us and their testimonial about the course, and you can see what you can learn and take away from our courses. Our students are always satisfied and happy with the knowledge they receive from our courses. And a little bit about our teachers who will be teaching intermediate course. These are our trainers, and I will now introduce you to Nora, who is expert in UX design and will now take over the webinar. Hello, Nora, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine, how are you?
We are so happy to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
And now I'll remove myself from the stream so you can you can tell our students more about UX design.
Maybe before I tell you a little bit more about the course, and especially also the differences between the beginner UX design course and the intermediate UX design course, let me maybe just introduce myself and tell you a little bit more about my background. My path into UX design has actually been via, like, not via graphic design, which is, I think, like kind of a path that a lot of people take, but I actually have more of a background in social sciences, and that's also why I usually focus a lot on the research side. So I often kind of say I'm a UX designer and researcher to kind of like also emphasize this research part, and that's kind of also links to my background. And I currently work for an edtech company called Ruhr Wunderkind, as a UX designer and researcher. And I actually also worked as a learning designer for some time. So I have a very, really a passion, an interest for everything that's related to learning and education. And about Enrico, and so Enrico is also going to teach part of the course, and he is a product designer with a focus on interaction design, user research, and strategy. And he has lots of experience working with agencies, startups, in-house, and just collaborating with a lot of big brands, ranging from Apple, Sony Mobile, BMW, etc. But yeah, like, let's start, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the two courses that we're offering. So the beginner UX design course, maybe you've also seen it on the website. It's actually a bit longer. So this one is 8 weeks long, and the intermediate UX design course is 6 weeks long. So that's, first of all, like, one difference. And then, of course, also already in the name, the beginning UX design course is really a course for people that haven't really worked in UX before, while the intermediate UX design course would be suitable for someone who has, for example, taken our beginner UX design course, someone who has work experience, like, for example, 1 to 2 years of work experience. And then also a lot of the content that we have in the intermediate UX design course really builds upon, like, what we have in the beginner UX design course. So in the beginner UX design course, we introduce you to user-centered design, ideation, just basic user research, user testing, wireframing, prototyping, interaction design. So just really, like, we tell you more about the basics of what is UX and how does it work, what is the normal process. And then into intermediate UX design course, we dive more into, for example, the mindset that you have as a UX designer. So we talk more about design thinking. We also talk more about advanced user research. So a lot more in depth than what, for example, we have in the beginner UX design course. We also talk about testing in an agile environment. For the ones that don't know what agile is a specific way of working that is very common. So that's something we focus on, that, like, how can you work very quickly, produce research results very quickly. Then we have rapid prototyping and pattern libraries, effective interaction design techniques, analytics and data-driven design. So as said, it's just following still, like, kind of more or less a similar process. I mean, that's what it builds on, but just adding a lot more information to it. So also in terms of, like, the outcomes, the course outcomes will be to produce a user journey map, using data and design, using pattern libraries, fast prototyping techniques, design thinking, and lean UX principles. As already mentioned, this training, the intermediate program, is perfect for people who have taken our beginner UX design course, or in general, people who already have some experience in UX, ideally 1 to 2 years. And it's, just people that want to help to take their careers. It's a course that will help to take their careers to the next stage. So I hope this already gives you a little bit of an overview of the differences. We'll later have a Q&A, so I can always answer some questions, but this is a little bit the difference between these two courses. In terms of the structure of the course, first of all, I already mentioned that the course focuses especially also on the mindset that you have as a designer, so design thinking. We really want to train your thinking as a designer and UX professional. So one of the things, for example, that we're going to be focusing on is advanced user research, or also lean UX, but also on the other hand, storytelling and presenting, because a big part of being a good designer is, for example, also being a good storyteller. You need to communicate well. You need to present your designs. You need to argue why you chose a certain design over another, and also back it up with research. But so just maybe to come back to design thinking, um, there are a lot of different definitions of what design thinking is. But one definition that I really like is by Tim Brown, the executive chair of IDEO, one of the most influential design firms in the world. And he defines it as design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. If we want to put this into a more visual format, because I presume a lot of you are also quite visual people. So basically, we have this diagram here. We need to balance between, on the one hand, the desirability, viability, and feasibility. So we try with design thinking, it tries to bring together what is desirable from a human point of view, what is technologically feasible, and also what is economically viable. I mean, after all, we're not making a piece of art, but we are still working in a business context. So that's, of course, well, it needs to be economically viable, what we are designing. And on the other hand, well, we also need to be able to design it, to code it later. And for that reason, it needs to be technologically feasible. Of course, again, it hangs together with economically viable. So what is kind of what can we do with the budget that we have? Design thinking also allows people who aren't trained as designers to use creative tools to address a vast range of challenges. So design thinking is something that is very, very important for you as a UX designer, but it's also something that you can teach to non-designers. And especially when you work in workshops, it's something that you can also talk about and address, and it's just kind of the process that you'll be following. A little bit more about the mindset, the design thinking mindset for UX design. So this is also, I won't go too much into detail, but these are just different things that are very, very important for UX designers to keep in mind, kind of like your compass. So first of all, you should focus on human values, show, don't tell, embrace experimentation, be mindful of the process, craft clarity, radical collaboration, and a bias towards action. Let's maybe just go into a few of them. So for example, show, don't tell. So for example, like IDEO that I just talked about, the Stanford D School heavily promotes the idea of using prototypes and real models to illustrate your creative ideas. So the show, don't tell mentality is about communicating your vision through the use of experiences, visuals, and stories. You don't say like, okay, like, you just don't only talk about like the way you want something to look like, but you just show it by just, for example, making a quick sketch. Again, here's saving time, not making like a full prototype, but just making a quick sketch. So this is, for example, one mindset that you really need to have as a UX designer. Another one, for example, would be a bias towards action. So this mindset means that you are more focused on action than thinking. Again, maybe here, I already said that, well, as a UX designer, you're not an artist. On the other hand, even if you work as a UX researcher, as a user researcher, you are not an academic researcher. An academic researcher is focused on thinking. We are still focused on action. So even if you, for example, work only as a user researcher, you still want to have the whole time produce and you produce insights, show insights that can lead to action. So instead of talking about an idea, you will take that idea and turn it into reality. Or instead of writing a long paper with a lot of the things that you observed in interviews, you will give some key insights, and this is what we need to act on, like maybe even make some suggestions. So by doing, we learn so much more about the process and how to improve it in the future. And maybe the last one from these different mindsets that would also be important is embrace experimentation. And this, for example, well, you probably already know about prototyping. So this is something prototyping helps you learn and think. It's not always just about validating an idea or just gaining evidence of the right solution. So just creating a prototype and then testing it with users. But it can also just simply help to take action on an idea to understand it better. I said I won't be going in detail when it comes to all of these different mindsets, but these are just some of the things that we'll be talking about in the course. And just to share another quote with you, this time from Sarah Gibbons from the Nielsen Norman Group, the design thinking ideology asserts that a hands-on, user-centric approach to problem solving can lead to innovation, and innovation can lead to differentiation and a competitive advantage. This hands-on, user-centric approach is defined by the design thinking process and comprises 6 distinct phases. So let's maybe just quickly look at this process and how it looks like. So what are those 6 stages that Sarah Gibbons talks about? They might sound very familiar to you. So you first empathize with the users by conducting research. Then you define a problem. This is, of course, very, very important. Many people make the mistake to jump into solution mode too soon. But first you do the research, you then actually define what is actually the problem that now we want to solve. Then afterwards, you start generating lots of ideas, the ideation phase. Or for example, if you're familiar with the double diamond model, you go very, very broad. You try to generate lots and lots of different ideas. Then you select a few of those ideas and prototype them. And then you test that prototype with users, iterate. That's, as you can see, it's not a linear process, but you're always going back. So you prototype, test, go back to the drawing board, and so on, you iterate. And then in the end, you implement what works. Or just kind of to look at the structure of the course, you will see a lot of similarities with what I just showed you. So basically, the structure of this course, it's 6 weeks. Why is it 6 weeks? Because we're basically just following this design thinking process that you just saw on the slide before. So we are first in the week 1, we're talking about empathize. Week 2, we're talking about define. Week 3 about ideation. Week 4 about prototyping. Week 5 about testing. Week 6, here's a small difference. We present as you work with a client. That's something we're going to learn more about later, but you will be working with a client and that implementation phase might still happen. But for us, week 6 is just presenting our design solution to the client. So now just to go a little bit in detail, week 1, understand. So for example, what does that mean? As I already said, understand, empathize. Here we just talk about understanding the problem, understanding the problem space rather. So for example, this would be, we talk about what is user research and specifically how do you conduct user interviews? What's the difference between evaluative and generative research? Really digging deep into a lot of different questions about user research and how to do it well. Week 2, define. So that would be how to synthesize your user research findings, how to define the problem, and how to create useful personas. Week 3, ideate. That, for example, includes how to come up with ideas, how to come up with strong solutions, and how to turn ideas into concepts. Week 4, prototype, how to validate your assumptions. What is lean UX? This is where we'll talk about lean UX, and how to imagine an ideal state experience. Then week 5, test, how to run a lean experiment, and what is a growth test. And then week 6, how to present your solutions, how to give feedback, and how to communicate effectively with stakeholders. So this is, as said, what I also mentioned at the beginning. Communication is a very, very important skill for designers. So that's also why we also integrate it into this part, week 6, where you present your solutions. We'll give you also tips how to present it well. And lastly, about the case study. Now we are going to get some more information about this part from Katarina.
Yeah. Hi, so I'm back to tell you more about our real world project examples that we have in class. So here is an example of real world project that our students worked on during the course and that you would expect to be a part of when you join our course. You would have an initial briefing call with the client, a team Slack group with the company to ask questions, and an opportunity at the end of the course to present your project to the company. So here you can see an example of the type of content that you would be producing over the course of 6 weeks with us. Each week of the course will give you the skills to produce statements, reports, and towards the end, actually put together project prototypes and user flows to present to your client. The client presentation will consist of findings throughout the course and user interviews that you have conducted. And also you will get an opportunity to present your final prototype to your client and get their feedback on the improved functionality and design. And also Nora and another trainer would be there to support you throughout the process and help you with everything. So here we would like to present our partners, Mobile UX London, which is running an upcoming festival of UX design. This will consist of 5 days online festival on the 21st to 25th of March, featuring 20 expert speakers, Q&A sessions, 8 workshops, and networking opportunities to connect with fellow peers in the UX and design communities globally. We currently have a special offer running. So if you purchase the intermediate course within the next 2 weeks, you will receive 2 full tickets with the access to recordings and the workshops. And the value of one ticket is £80. So it's a great offer. Next. And also another special offer that we will provide you with is if you use this code, workshop 15, you will get 15% off the intermediate UX course within next 2 weeks if you purchase the course with us. And here we have a link that you can click that takes you to the page. And now we will have questions, and you can ask any questions to Nora. So please get your questions ready in now. Type them in the chat, and we will be happy to answer them. Okay. Okay, so next one. Oh, thank you, Peter. So let's see if we have some questions. Anything about UX design? Okay.
What's the average age of UX students? Well, I would say overall, the average age of UX students, a lot of people are quite young. And also in general, I would say the tech industry is a very young industry. But that doesn't mean that you can't try it. So the average age is maybe low. I think on the one hand, I would say that I would need to look up some statistics. My guess would be that maybe a lot of people that get into UX are between 25 and 35. But on the other hand, and as said, it's also just because the tech industry in general is very young. But on the other hand, I think that's exactly also why we need some older people in the UX, in the tech industry in general, and especially also in UX design. And I think that it doesn't necessarily, like, only because you're older, it doesn't mean that you can't learn UX design anymore.
Thank you for the question, Carpe Diem. Anyone else?
Carpe Diem, if you want, you can also just tell us a little bit about your experience. And so I can tell you a bit more about like how it links to UX design.
Maybe you can share with our audience what is your favorite thing about UX design and how you decided to go into that field. I know I always like to hear that.
So for me, I mean, what I love about UX design is just that it's a super broad field. So it just takes it's just a combination of so many other fields, and it doesn't get boring. So I think when I was a teenager, I didn't really knew what I wanted to be, and I always had a lot of different interests. I think at some point I wanted to become a theater director, and it was kind of like something I was focusing on when I was 19. But then like I thought that sociology and anthropology was super interesting, and I took courses. Then at some point, I had an interest in psychology. And the cool thing about UX design is just, well, I mean, learning about psychology. I need to learn about psychology in order to make better designs for users. Oh, right now I'm interested in neurodivergence. Oh, I can definitely learn about that. I need to learn about neurodivergence. I need to understand how, for example, people with ADHD would look at a website and maybe how I can design for them in a better way. Or, for example, yeah, just learning about graphic design, just learning about visuals, all that kind of stuff. Oh, that's also very helpful. So it's just a field that draws inspiration and knowledge from so many other fields. And I think that makes it very fascinating just because it doesn't get boring. And also already in terms of tasks, I mean, tasks that depends, of course, on the company that you work for and also whether you are more of a specialist or more of a generalist. So depending on that, maybe you have a bit more like the same task to work on every day. But even then, even if you're a specialist, maybe working in a bigger company, even then I would say you are not going to do the same thing every day in and day out. Yeah, so I think this kind of like when I found UX design, this is kind of what I thought was really, really interesting.
Great. And then here, thank you so much for an answer. I agree with you. Me being just a training manager and just learning from the other side about UX design makes me feel so interested and so excited about UX. So I like learning about it more. So here is another question.
That's a very interesting background, actually. With Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, and NATO, basically in radio communication security network. So would I recommend UX design for you? Maybe question number one, it depends a little bit what tasks you've been doing. And then I think it also just depends on just playing to your strengths. So for example, let's say a graphic designer is probably going to have an easier time to get into UI design. Someone who has maybe more of a background in social sciences, it's probably going to be easier for that person to get into a user research position or in general like a UX design position that has a strong research focus. So yeah, in your case, I don't know exactly what tasks you were doing or you are doing, but I think, for example, how you could play to your strengths is trying to like also like the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and so on. They also need UX designers. So with that background, it could be very, very interesting to get into UX and kind of like tell them about like, look, this is my experience that I have. I really understand. I understand the World Bank inside out, and then kind of playing to your strengths in that way. That's something that most UX designers can't offer.
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for the wonderful answer, Nora. We have another question from Peter. Thank you, Peter, for the question.
Is the UX Professional Association trade body? There are several. I don't think I can give one answer because there are so many different ones, and it depends on the country that you're in.
Yes, Peter, if you want, you can let us know like what country you're in, and then if Laura knows anything about it, she will be happy to share that. Oh, here is another question. Thank you everyone for typing the questions. We are very happy and excited to answer them. Thank you, Salim.
What is the most difficult, or I would say the most challenging for students to master and implement in their work from the UX design course? Again, I think it depends on your background. So, for example, if you come from a graphic design background, you will probably not have a lot of issues with UI design. Also depends, for example, how familiar are you already with digital tools? So, for example, when it comes to, well, one of the tools that we often use is Figma. So Figma for me, for example, it wasn't very difficult to learn because even before I even knew what UX design was, photography was always a hobby of mine. So I always played around in Photoshop and I don't know how a lot of other softwares. So just learning Figma was very, very easy for me. So yeah, then, but for example, if you have a background in graphic design, it might be harder to implement the part of research. How do you, for example, design a good survey and so on? But it's also again why I recommend to just play to your strengths, especially when you're rather new in UX design.
What is your favorite tool to use in UX?
I would say, I mean, Figma is definitely a cool tool. Yeah.
Great. Oh, here is another answer. Thank you, Peter, for quick answer.
UX writers and content designers university courses in the EU. I'm sorry, I don't think I can answer that question. UX, I'm not a UX writer myself, so I think that's something you would just need to, yeah, search for online. In general, what I can say is already that there are not a lot of UX design courses at universities in general. So it would, especially not in Europe. So it would very much surprise me if you will find a lot of university courses for UX writers.
Yes, so let's see. Let's see if anyone else writes a question. But those were some good questions and amazing answers from you, Nora.
Yeah, let's see if we're going to get more questions.
Yeah, we can wait for another minute or so. Or if you want to share with us in the meantime any like interesting stories from your work in UX recently, something that was inspiring for you that you would like to share.
Well, so for example, right now, I already told you that I work for a company called Robo Wunderkind. It's an
Yeah.
ed tech company, and we basically what we're doing is we have a robotics kit with an app and also with online learning material, and it's to help kids learn about coding or more STEM learning in general. So actually, right now I'm just doing a lot of calls with teachers from the US, just because, well, currently we have a pilot project in the US, and we're experimenting with like our new learning platform. So I'm just learning a lot about the US education system, and that's also, for example, something why UX design is so great for people that are very curious and like to learn about a lot of different things, because especially with these kind of interviews, you just learn a lot about a lot of different topics. So how would I otherwise learn about the US education system? I don't live in the US. So just through these interviews, it's very, very interesting to get a perspective of teachers and how it all works.
Of course. And what is your favorite thing about teaching for UX Academy and work with our students during the course?
I mean, I think yeah, it is because that I can teach and that it's not just pre-recorded. So I can also give individual recommendations. The groups are quite small. It's not that we're teaching to hundreds of students, but it's small groups. So we can really give individual recommendations. So it's also something I try to implement. I try to adapt to the students. So for example, okay, I have one student that really wants to focus more on UX research. I have someone else who is very interested in information architecture. So I also try to personalize a little bit for them. Of course, I still have, well, the regular course, but I can still personalize in the way that I just give you some specific recommendations when it comes to resources. And I think, yeah, that's something great. And also, of course, that we are actually working with clients. So on the one hand, the course at UX Academy is, of course, quite short, especially if you compare it to other boot camps that last for like 8 months. But on the other hand, on the one hand, I think the boot camps usually, well, you just have to study on your own. And there's some homework, of course, that you will have to do for UX Academy, but a lot of it is also live. So depending on what type of learner you are, this can be super, super helpful to actually have those live classes and immediately ask a question and so on. And yeah, that you actually can work with a client. And that's usually also great when you apply for a job to actually show, look, I didn't just like invent my own project, but I actually worked for a client. Makes a huge difference when you can show case studies, real case studies in your portfolio.
Exactly. And me being a training manager, what I enjoyed the most is that connection that is made between the trainers, our students, and also the clients that we are working on a project, because the groups are small and we're able to build that connection and interaction. And so I don't see any other questions. And now I would like to thank everyone for their time, especially you, Nora, for being here with us tonight, and
Thanks for having me.
for telling us about UX design and the course. And now we will end our broadcast. Bye bye. See you, everyone. Hope you
Thank
enjoyed
you.
our session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.